You crushed your sales targets. Management sees you as the next boss. But here's the question nobody asks. Does your boss actually want a successor? Or is he quietly watching you build the very bus he's about to throw you under? You may think of a toxic boss as someone who's a poor communicator, might be short-tempered, or at worst makes you sit long hours. You are so wrong, because a toxic boss can ruin your career for life, and that too, right before your own eyes. This video is about the psychology behind that destruction. Why certain bosses deliberately target their highest performers. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing everything right, and that terrifies them. The workplace is complicated, and it is never as straightforward as it looks. Because behind every smile, every great job, every pat on the back, your boss is running a calculation. A cold, quiet, constant calculation on every single person who reports to them. Who makes me look good in front of management? Who handles the clerical work without complaining? Who has an eye for detail? And the one question they never say out loud, who in this room could actually replace me? A healthy boss hears that question and feels pride. A toxic boss hears that question and feels panic. Psychologists call this status insecurity. It's a deeply primitive reaction rooted in dominant psychology. The same pattern observed in primate hierarchies for thousands of years. And when it activates in your boss, something behind their eyes changes. You won't see it. You won't hear it. But from that moment forward, you are no longer their employee. You are their target. Have you ever felt that suddenly you're not invited to high-level meetings you used to be a part of? Projects you would normally lead get reassigned without explanation. Credit for your ideas starts quietly flowing upward, with someone else's name attached. You may think of it as normal, and that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. Because none of this is accidental. Your boss isn't forgetting to add you to the invite list. They're removing you from it, deliberately, strategically, without ever saying a word. Dr. Robert Hogan, one of the leading researchers in organizational psychology, describes this behavior as strategic marginalization. It's not impulsive, it's not emotional, it is a methodical effort to reduce your visibility within the organization, without leaving a single trail of evidence. And here's what breaks people. On the surface, nothing looks wrong. Your boss still smiles at you, still says good morning, still tells you you're doing a great job. But behind that smile, your influence is being quietly dismantled, piece by piece, day by day, until you wake up one morning and realize you've become invisible in the very place you used to shine. So why you? Why not the slacker? Why not the person who shows up late and does the bare minimum? Because the slacker is not a threat. The slacker doesn't get noticed by upper management. The slacker doesn't generate ideas that make the boss feel intellectually outpaced. The slacker doesn't accidentally expose the gap between their performance and the boss's contribution. You do. Research from the Harvard Business Review found that high-performing employees are disproportionately targeted by insecure managers. Not occasionally, disproportionately. The better you are at your job, the more likely you are to trigger defensive behavior in a boss who measures their own value by comparison. Think about that. The very thing you were told would protect you, hard work, dedication, results, is the exact thing that paints a target on your back. Not because the system is broken, but because the person running your part of the system is threatened by your competence. Have you ever heard the term narcissistic leadership? Most people haven't. But once you understand it, you will never look at your workplace the same way again. Narcissistic leaders don't see their team as people. They see them as extensions of their own ego. When you perform well, they take the credit. When you perform too well, they feel exposed. There is no amount of loyalty, no amount of deference, no amount of making them look good that will ever be enough. Because the issue was never your behavior. The issue is their internal fragility. Psychologist Jean Lippman-Blumen coined the term toxic leaders to describe this exact pattern. Leaders who systematically undermine the people they are supposed to develop. not because they lack management training, but because their ego cannot survive the presence of someone who might outshine them. And here's the part that breaks most people. These bosses often appear charismatic, confident, and well-liked by upper management. They know exactly how to perform competence upward while practicing destruction downward. The people above them see a strong leader. The people below them experience something very different. Once the targeting begins, the next phase is almost always gaslighting. And this is where most high performers start doubting themselves. Your boss starts giving you contradictory feedback. One week, they praise your initiative. The next week, they tell you you're overstepping. You bring solutions, they say you're not following process. You follow process, they say you lack creativity. They keep changing the goalpost every single time they see you are about to win. The goal is not to correct your performance. The goal is to destabilize your confidence, because a confident high performer is dangerous to them. But a confused, self-doubting high performer, that person stops volunteering ideas, stops speaking up in meetings, stops being visible. And that is exactly what the toxic boss wants. Not your resignation, not yet. They want your silence first. They want you to shrink, to become smaller, to stop being a mirror that reflects their inadequacy. The next move in the playbook is isolation, and this is where it gets truly strategic. A toxic boss knows that a high performer with strong relationships across the organization is untouchable. You have allies. People advocate for you. Your reputation exists independently of your boss's narrative. So they start cutting those connections. They reassign you to solo projects. They schedule one-on-one meetings where they subtly question your colleagues' loyalty to you. They drop comments like, "I'm not sure the leadership team is as impressed with your work as you think they are. It's slow, it's methodical, and it works." Because humans are social creatures. When you feel isolated at work, your performance drops, your confidence drops, your willingness to fight drops. And suddenly, the high performer who was once unstoppable starts looking like someone who's struggling, which is exactly the narrative the toxic boss has been building. And then comes the final phase, the exit trap. This is where a toxic boss engineers your departure in a way that makes it look voluntary. They give you an impossible project with an unrealistic deadline. They change your KP as mid-quarter without documentation. They put you on a performance improvement plan. Not because your performance declined, but because they've spent months creating the paper trail that says it did. By the time you leave, whether you quit or get pushed out, the story has already been written. And it doesn't mention anything about a threatened boss. It says you weren't a good fit. It says you struggled with feedback. It says the role evolved beyond your capabilities. And the worst part? Sometimes you believe it too. Made it their mission to quietly destroy you. First, document everything, every contradictory instruction, every moved goalpost, every meeting you were excluded from, dates, times, emails, screenshots. A toxic boss operates without a trail. Your job is to build one. Second, never isolate. The moment you feel yourself being pulled away from colleagues, push back. Maintain your relationships across the organization. Have coffee with people from other teams. Stay visible. Because a toxic boss can only control the narrative when yours goes silent. Third, stop performing for their approval. This is the hardest one. High performers are wired to earn validation from their superiors. But when your superior is the threat, that instinct becomes self-destruction. Redirect your energy. Let your work speak to the organization, not to the person trying to bury it. And fourth, know when to leave. Not every battle is worth fighting from the inside. Sometimes the most powerful move a high performer can make is to walk away on their own terms and before the exit trap closes. Leaving is not losing. Leaving is refusing to let someone else write the ending of your story. Now, these 4 strategies are just the surface. There is an entire playbook for outsmarting a toxic boss. Specific tactics, psychological counters, and power moves that most employees never learn. If you want us to go deeper into that, drop a comment below saying Part 2, and we'll break it all down for you. So if you're watching this and something felt familiar, if the goalposts kept moving, if your confidence slowly crumbled in a place where you once thrived, if you started questioning whether you were ever as good as you believed, now you know the truth. You were never the problem. You were the threat. If your boss is threatened by your talent, that is a diagnosis of their leadership, not a reflection of your worth. Remember that. Carry it with you, and never let someone else's insecurity convince you that your best wasn't good enough. Subscribe if this resonated, because the psychology of your workplace is always worth understanding.